Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another quick Flutter tutorial. In this one, I'm going to show you how to code up a minimal notes app with a very nice aesthetic design that has both light mode and dark mode. So I've opened up a new Flutter project, and just to keep everyone on the same page, in my main function, I'm running my app and I've got this pages folder with the notes page. And it's just returning a blank scaffold, so you should just have a white blank app like this. Now the first thing we need to do is to import the Isar database dependencies. So I'll link the documentation below, but this is just what I'm following. So we just want to grab all this and get the packages. So just then we should have added 3 packages. And I'm also going to add another one, the provider package, just for some simple state management. Cool, so what we just did is if you go to your pubspec.yaml, you should see these 4 things that we just imported. Cool, now let's create a new folder called models, and the first thing we have to do is create a model of the note. Let's start by importing Isar, and let's create our class. So for the note, I just want to know the ID, and you can say isar.autoincrement. So this will just start from 0 and then go to 1, 2, 3 each time you create a new note. And then the most important thing for a note is just the text, which is a string. And I'm going to put the late tag here because we're going to initialize it later. Cool, so this is how you create a regular class. Now for Isar, you're going to need to add this line, part note.g.dart. So it's going to be this exact same file name as what we had before, but we're going to put the G in there for generated. Okay, so this line is needed to generate the file, and then we're going to run this command. And we need to put a collection tag before this note. We're basically going to run this little command. So simply what we're doing here is we want to save some things in our Isar database, right? Now, because I created a custom object like this note, and this will generate this new file for us, and that basically just allows us to store these notes in the database. It says do not modify by hand, so don't touch this, but this step is just required so that we can save our notes in the database. Cool, so now that we've done that, let's create one more file here called note database, and in here I want to have all of the operations. So the first thing we need to do is just to initialize the database. And then we're going to do the CRUD operations. So create, read, update, and delete. So using this, we can create a nice little note app. Okay, so for us specifically, we're going to create a note and save to the database. We're going to read some notes from the database, update them, and also delete a note. So let's fill this out. Now at the beginning, we want to have the Isar object. And we're going to create the method to initialize all this. So the first thing is we just need to know the directory where we're going to save it. So at the top, if you just import the path provider, this was one of the packages we imported at the beginning of the video. And so this thing just helps us get the path directory for where all of this is going to be saved. So await Isar open, and we just need to pass it the schema, which if you type note schema, this is just telling us the type of data inside. Cool, and for the directory, we can just pass it the directory path. Cool, so that's how you initialize it at the beginning. Now we also need to have a list of notes. So I'm just going to call this current notes, and it's just going to be an empty list at the beginning. And let's start off with creating a new note. So to make this more clear, I'm going to call it add note, and as a parameter, I'm just going to require a string that is a text. Cool, so final new note equals, we're going to create our note object. So once we created a new note object, let's then save it to the database. So we can say isar.write transaction, and we want to look for the put. Cool. And then after that, we want to reread from the database, okay, just to update the changes. So let's fill out the read method here. And again, to be clear, I'm just going to call it fetch notes. we can say isar.notes where find all. So this will just grab all of the notes in the database. So let's just clear our current notes and then just add it all in. Cool, and then now it's time for the update. So if I want to update a note, then I just need to know the ID, and we want to also know the new text. So let's firstly get the existing note by identifying with that ID. And if this note isn't null, so if it exists, then let's assign the new text. Okay, and then we can write the transaction again, isar.notes put the existing note. So this will update it. And then we can reread everything by calling the fetch notes method. And lastly, let's delete a note. So for this, all I need is just the ID. And then we can say write transaction and then delete. And let's fetch the notes again. Awesome, so that's the CRUD operations for the note database. So remember this initialize method? Let's come back to our main.dart file and we're going to initialize the note database. So firstly, we're going to do widgets Flutter binding ensure initialized. And let's change this to an asynchronous function so that we can await the note database and initialize. Cool. Now to create the actual note app, I'm going to use provider for some simple state management. And so I've actually made a separate tutorial on provider and you can check that out if you need, but I can show you here real quick how to use it. We've already imported it at the start of the video. So if you come to our note database, then we can say extends change notifier. And the other thing we need to do is just to go to this fetch notes and I'm going to say notify listeners. And what that does is we're going to notify the widgets that are listening to these changes. So pretty much it will update on the screen. So just a little bit of setting up to do in the main function. When we run my app, wrap it in the change notifier provider. And in the create field, we want to create the note database. And then in the child, we can return my app. Cool. And then once you save that, it's probably a good idea to just kill the app and run it again. And now we can come to our notes page and start filling this out. So from here on out, I'll show you how to do the UI and the buttons and all that to connect our database so that we have a simple notes app. So I'm just going to start off with an app bar, just saying notes. And we're going to need a floating action button. So you can see it's that little button on the bottom right. And we can give it an icon. Now let's come up to the top here and I'm just going to create those 4 methods real quick, the CRUD operations. And what this is for is to deal with any UI related stuff. So for example, like when we create a note and we click on this button, we want to show a dialog and have a little box here with a text field so that we can actually get input from the user. So this is all like the UI related stuff. So if you just save this and you run it and you click on that plus button, you can see it's going to open up this dialog box with the text field inside and you can start typing in. And so now if you want to access what the user typed in, we need a text controller. And so if you look at the text field underneath, it says controller and we can give it our text controller. Cool, now I think we're going to need a button. So if you go to the actions, let's have a create button. So if we click on this button on pressed, let's say context.read note database, and then now you can access all of those options from before. So we want to add note. And let's just give it the text in the controller. Cool, so this line we'll just add it to the database and then let's give it a child. Now one thing is when you click this create button, we actually want to pop the dialog, right? We want to dismiss the box. So we can say navigator.pop and that will pop the box. So now we have the ability to add notes into the database. We're going to need to read the notes so that we can actually display it on our screen. So let's fill out this read notes method and fetch notes. Sweet, so now that it's all loaded up, let's come down to the build method and access the database. And create the list of notes. Sweet, so now it's in current notes. We can now create a list view.builder. And we want to firstly get the individual note by going through each index like 0, 1, 2, 3. And then now we can return the list tile UI. Oops, I forgot to give it the item count. So that's just going to be current notes.length. Okay, let's try. So if I save this and I open it up, you can see that there's the notes. Now, one problem is it's actually not showing up on the startup at the beginning of the app. So in the initial state, let's read notes. And I think we can actually change this from watch to read. Yeah, that works. So what we just did here is on app startup, we can fetch the existing notes. Cool, so now we can add notes in. Now, one thing that we should improve on is once we added a new note, we should clear the controller because it's still got the previous note in there. Sweet, now if you come down to our list tile UI, we need some buttons here. So on the trailing, I want to have a row because I want 2 buttons. An edit button and then a delete button. So that's going to be for the update note method. And so for the update note method, let's require the note that we're updating as a parameter. And let's pre-fill the current note text into our controller. And show the dialog with the text field. Cool, so this is very similar to the previous dialog box. So if you have any questions, just let me know below in the comments. We're going to clear the controller, pop the dialog, and that's pretty much it. And then let's just fill out the delete node as well. So for this one, we just need to know the ID, and then just go to the node database, and then delete. Sweet, so now let's come back to our UI and create icon buttons. For the update, and the delete button as well. Okay, awesome. If you click on the delete, yeah, it all works, and editing works as well. Sweet, so now let's create a new folder called theme. And I want to have a light mode and a dark mode for our app. So for the brightness, we want to make it light, and the color scheme, I already chose the colors that I feel like is appropriate for light mode, so you can just copy what I have. But essentially, I want to fill out the background color with a shade of 300. And then you can have a lot of variations. So the primary color, the secondary color, and also I like to have an inverse primary, which is like the opposite color, so a very dark one. Let's copy this and create another one for the dark mode. And for this, we're just going to make it a lot darker. So you can use whatever colors you want, but let's try these numbers out. Let's create a new file called theme provider so that we can switch between the 2 modes. So firstly, let's say it starts off as light mode. And let's have a getter so that we can access what the current theme is. And we also want to have a getter method for if it's dark mode or not. So this will be helpful. So this is going to be a boolean where you return a true or false. So if you do this little check here, this one is going to check, is our current theme data equal to the dark mode? So this is going to return a true or false. And let's have a setter method so that we can set the theme. And mainly what we need here is just a method to toggle the theme. So if the theme data is light mode, then let's change it to dark mode and vice versa. So let's just add some comments here so that you guys know what this is all about. So if you come back to our main.dart file, remember we already have a change notifier provider for our node database. But I also want to have another one for our theme. So in that case, we can actually have multiple providers. So one for the node database and then one for the theme. And then if I come back to our material app, you can specify in the theme. Let's use our provider to get the current theme data. Oh, looks like we have a bit of an error and whoops, I forgot to give the child our app. Sweet, so if I save this, we can see some of the themes already got changed. Now, if I come to our notes page, which is the page we're currently looking at, let's decorate this up. So for the app bar, I like to make the elevation 0, so no shadow. And for the background color, I'm just going to make it transparent, so we don't really see an app bar. Because I actually want my title to be a custom title, so like a custom heading in this column. So let's say like notes. And let's just align this to the start. And let's just add some paddings and decorate this up. To make our app look a little fancy, I'm going to introduce a Google font. So let's just add that package in. And of course you can choose any Google font that you like, but I personally want to use this one, DM Serif Text. Cool, and remember how we had the colors in light mode and dark mode, right? So we can say theme.ofContext and then go to the color scheme, and then you should be able to see all of those options that we had from before. So for this one, I'm going to use inverse primary, right, which is that color. And by the way, I like to make the text not completely black and just make it like a kind of dark gray. So that's what this color is. And for this one, maybe we can just put a padding just on the left of 25. And if you come to our overall scaffold, you can specify the background. So go to the color scheme and let's just give it the background. So it should be like a light gray. Awesome, now time to add a menu drawer. So if you just give it a drawer widget, you can see on the top left there's that menu. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this drawer out into a new component. And let's just call it my drawer. And just give it the background color. And we're going to have a column with a few different things. So first of all, for the header, it's always a good idea to use a drawer header. And let's just give it an icon. And before we fill this out any further, I want to just save this and come back to our scaffold. And let's just import my drawer, which is what we just created. Cool, so that's what it currently looks like. And let's come back to our drawer.dart file, and we want to have a couple of list tiles here. So one for the note and one for the settings. Now, even for this, because we're going to probably repeat some codes, I'm going to create a drawer tile as a separate component. And essentially this is just a list tile. And what I want to know between each tile is the title and also the leading icon. And actually also we want to know the on tap. So if you tap this, we can grab this function here and let's just require it when we create this widget. Sweet, so let's see what this looks like. If I come back to my drawer, we can say drawer tile, there it is. So auto import, and let's just fill this out. So one for the notes and one for the settings. Cool, and there it is. Now I think we could probably give some padding to the left. And we can just style this up to what we want. Cool, now let's fill out the on tap. So if I tap the notes tile, I just want to go back to the original page, which is where I'm currently at. So what I'm going to just do is we're just going to pop the dialog. So navigator.pop, and what that does is it's just going to pop the drawer. Now when it comes to the settings, we actually don't even have a settings page, so let's just create that real quick. And so if I tap on this settings tile, we want to firstly pop the menu drawer like before, but then let's also navigate our way to this new settings page. And let's just try it out. And sweet, we go to this new settings blank page. So now let's turn our attention to filling out this settings page. So just starting with the background, let's give it our background color. And let's just give it an app bar. And same as before, I just want the elevation to be 0 and transparent. And the reason why I still want an app bar there anyway is because I just want that little back arrow, those kind of leading icons there. Sweet, now in this settings page, all I really want is just a switch for the dark mode. So let's just put this in a row. And I'm going to use a Cupertino switch, which is the Apple looking one. So for the value, if I just say true for now, and we don't do anything on the on change, let's just see what it looks like. And yep, there it is. So that's the kind of Apple style switch. You can say true or false to make it on and off. So this value, let's go to our provider and we can access our theme provider and we can get the boolean is dark mode. So remember how we created that earlier? It's just going to return a true or false. Cool. So currently it's light mode, so it's off. On the on changed, if we flip this switch, what we want is to go to our theme provider and then just toggle the theme. Right, so if I click this, you can see now everything is dark mode. Cool, and that's looking pretty good so far. So I'm just going to decorate these texts really quickly. And let's space this out and wrap this in a container so that we can just kind of make this look a little nicer. And I don't like sharp corners, so let's make the border radius more curved. And this is looking really cool. Now in our components, let's create another one called note tile. And so for each note tile, I just want to know the text. And I'm just going to decorate this up kind of with those borders and the curved borders as well. So you can see currently in our node page, we're returning this list tile UI. So we pretty much want this, but we're going to just decorate our own custom one. So we're going to add some padding and some margins. And we have to add in the trailing section, we need to add those two buttons for the edit and the delete. So we're actually going to need to require those functions when we create this node tile. Awesome. So if I come back to my node page, we just have to fill out this node tile. So on edit, let's give it our update note method. And then on delete, let's give it our delete note method. Awesome. So that's looking pretty good. Now I just want to fine tune some of these colors. So if I come back to my theme, right, in the dark mode, we can actually click on a more specific color. So I actually want everything to be a little bit more darker. Yeah. And the tile itself, which is the primary color, I want that also a little bit darker. And so you can just play around with this to fine tune the colors to exactly what you want. Cool, so let's just make sure we can edit the note. And even this dialog box, right, it's a bit too gray for my liking. I want it a bit darker. So I think we didn't even give it the color, did we? Yep, so in this alert dialog, let's give it the background color. And same thing for the update note dialog. And yep, that color looks much better. What else? The floating action button on the bottom right, it doesn't look too good. So let's go to that guy. And I'm just going to firstly make it inverse primary. So you can see that plus button. And the background color of the actual app, we can make it secondary or primary. So yeah, just play around with the colors to what you want. Cool. Now, one other final UI adjustment I want to make is currently in our node tile, we can see both the edit and the delete button. I want to hide this in a little option, like in a little menu. So you see these two buttons here. I'm going to get rid of this row and we're going to have a icon button with the 3 dots, which I believe is more vertical. So yep, these 3 dots as the menu. So I want to make this much more minimal and hide some of the functionality into this little menu. So if I click on these 3 dots, I want to open up something, right? Now I'm going to introduce another package called Popup, which I made a tutorial on before. So you can check that out if you need more understanding on that specific package. But I can show you real quick how to use it because I think it's a really cool package. So Flutter pub add Popup. And what this does is when I click on these 3 dots, we can say show Popup, there it is. And in the body builder, funny name, you can return the note settings, which we haven't created yet. So if I create some note settings, this one is essentially just going to be, currently, let's just have it as a red container. I just want to see what this looks like. If I come back to my note tile, let's import what we just created. And let's click on these 3 dots. Sweet, there it is. So it opens up another little box and we can control the width and the height. And I actually want this to be opened up right next to those 3 dots, and it's probably because the context is getting kind of confused. So what you can do is just wrap this in a builder, and it will just have its own context. So you can see now when I click on the 3 dots, the box opens up right next to those dots, which is pretty cool. Sweet, so if I come back to my note settings, let's decorate this up. So I basically want a column for those 2 options, which is the edit and the delete. Right, so I'm going to have a column, and we're going to have a gesture detector so that we can tap on these containers. Cool, so if I save this and just restart it, you can click on these 3 dots, and sweet, there it is. Now it's looking a little scrunched up to the top, so let's center these text widgets, and maybe we could style it up a bit. Make it bold maybe. And that's looking pretty good. Cool, so if I edit this, we can still update the note, but it looks like we should pop the dialogue as well. So if you tap on this option, then we do want to edit it, but just after that, let's also pop the dialogue. Or maybe before that. So let's see how this looks. Oh, I actually forgot to say an exclamation mark, which means it's definitely not null. Whoops, and it's a function. So let's try this, and everything should be working like usual. Now one thing is this drawer, maybe we could change this icon because I don't really like that icon. You can change it to any picture you want. I'm just going to use a pen or an edit. Yep, let's leave it at that one. And that's looking really good. So we have a very aesthetic, minimal looking Notes app with both light mode and dark mode. So I hope you learned something in terms of both storing the data in the database, but also the UI and design part of this to make a nice looking app. Comment below if you have any questions on anything. I'll come around and help. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.